You know, every complex project, whether it's building a skyscraper or launching a rocket, it needs a solid game plan. Well, in modern construction, that game plan has a name, the BIM Execution Plan, or BEP. This is the document that literally keeps these massive, super complex projects from spiraling into chaos. So today we're going to break down exactly what it is and why it's become so non-negotiable. Let's get into it.
Okay, just think about a modern building project for a second. It's this incredibly complicated web of specialists. I mean, you've got the owner, the architect, structural engineers, MEP engineers, contractors, subcontractors, fabricators. Seriously, the list just goes on and on. It is a massive team, and they all have to work together in perfect harmony.
So here's the million-dollar question, right? How do you prevent total chaos? How do you make sure the electrical contractor's model actually talks to the steel detailer's model? How in the world do you get them all aligned and working from a single playbook?
Well, the answer is a document that's kind of like the blueprint for the actual project blueprint. It's the master plan that governs how the digital model of the building, the BIM, is going to be created, managed, and shared by every single person involved.
And that's where the BIM Execution Plan, or BEP as you'll hear it called, comes in. To put it simply, it's the master document. It outlines every single rule of engagement for using building information modeling on a project. It really sets the stage for everything else that happens.
This quote just nails it. It gets right to the heart of what the BEP is all about. This isn't about adding more paperwork or more complexity. It's about creating absolute clarity right from day one. Who's doing what? When are they doing it? And how are we all going to work together? The BEP answers those fundamental questions before they can turn into really expensive problems on site.
Okay, so we know what a BEP is, but why is it so critical? Well, because without one, tiny little miscommunications can lead to huge, costly mistakes. I mean, imagine this. The HVAC ductwork model doesn't account for a last-minute change to a structural beam. So on site, the fabricator builds the duct, it gets delivered, and it doesn't fit. That's a 5-figure mistake right there in rework and delays, all because two teams weren't working from the same playbook. That's exactly why a BEP is an absolute must-have.
And the value of a BEP isn't just about preventing that one mistake. No, it's a whole ecosystem of advantages that just radiates out from this one central document. It solves so many problems at once. Let's break down a few of the most critical functions.
First up, it's basically the project Bible for anybody new. When a new person joins the team 6 months into the project, you don't have to spend days explaining all the rules. You just hand them the BEP. It's got the standards, the processes, the contacts, literally everything they need to get up to speed fast.
A BEP also makes sure that the entire BIM process is perfectly tailored to this specific project. I mean, a hospital has completely different needs than a residential tower, right? So the BEP customizes the whole strategy, making sure the right tools and processes are being used for the specific job at hand. It's not one size fits all.
And this one is huge. It addresses the tech question from day one. Does the team have the right software versions? Is their hardware powerful enough to handle these massive files? The BEP forces everyone to define the IT infrastructure needed, which prevents massive technical headaches down the line.
Okay, so this all sounds essential, I get it. But how is a BUP actually created? You might be thinking it's this monumental task, but the process is surprisingly logical. It breaks down into a few clear, structured steps.
So the whole process really boils down to these 4 key steps. First, you start by identifying the project's goals. What do we want BIM to do for us? Then, you design the process map that shows how BIM is going to achieve those goals. Next, you get into the details, the what's, when's, and who's of sharing information. And finally, you define all the technology needed to support the whole thing.
Now, it's also really important to know that there are 2 main types of BEP. You've got the pre-contract BEP. Think of this like your team's resume. It's what you submit with your bid to show the client, hey, we know what we're doing, and here's our plan. Then once you win the job, you develop the post-contract BEP. That is the detailed, official, often legally binding game plan for the entire project.
So, when you start putting all these pieces together, the BIM execution plan transforms. It stops being just a document and becomes something way more powerful. It basically becomes the central nervous system for the entire project.
It is the single source of truth. It clearly defines everyone's roles, it sets the standards for all the digital files, and it outlines the exact rules for how information is going to be exchanged. It fosters real collaboration, it lays out key project milestones, and at the end of the day, it's the go-to reference for the entire team.
And you know, all of this points to a really fascinating, forward-looking question.
As our buildings get smarter and more connected, as they transform into these living digital assets full of sensors and data, how will these game plans, these BEPs, have to evolve? How will they manage not just a building's construction, but its entire dynamic life? That's something to think about.